Dale Matthews, Grants Pass. There are a number of sort of goofy things that have been happening at the meetings, and they've sped up a bit. So it's in order to keep track of some of them, I thought I'd review some of the rules, new rules that apply to me and only to me. One is my, excuse me, ma'am, do you mind? Ed Power's girlfriend. One of them is about my dangerous camera. Now, this camera, I must continually touch it, and I can never leave it alone, except that the day that you made that rule, in the little back room, same day, there was another fellow that came in with the camera. He left it on the seat next to him. He walked out of the room, and there was no enforcement of that rule. I don't think you need to really say any more. The rules only apply to me, but I can do more. You're not allowed, I'm not allowed now, to ask a question for the second time after I've asked it the first time. Even though the commissioners don't answer the first time, I'm never allowed to ask that question again. That happened at a recent meeting where Keith Heckle was the chair. And then, as Kathy Smith came up earlier today, she actually came up in that same meeting. Now it's speeding up. See, it's not the same day, it's the same meeting. And she asked a question that she had asked before. In fact, there were 4 other people who asked questions that they had asked once before. Now, they weren't shouted down by the vice chair. They weren't stopped from saying anything. I was stopped 5 times. Oh, what you're saying is repetitive, repetitive, repetitive. And nobody else was stopped for being repetitive. So the rule only applies to me. That's illegal. And then one more thing. There's a new rule that if a person, especially in government, is not in the room, this was Cheryl Walker's new rule, not in the room, you can't talk about them. So what that means is, if the President of the United States is not in this room, it's ridiculous, but this is the rule, then you can't talk about it. If former Commissioner Dwight Ellis is not in this room, you can't talk about it. Can't talk about Adolf Hitler, he's not in the room. Can't talk about Richard Nixon, he's no longer alive. You cannot talk about it. I'm the one that can't talk about him. However, of course, on that same day again, Sandy Casanelli was brought up in the little back room. She wasn't in the room, but you're allowed to do so. I'm not. So I bring these things up because, as you know, as Steve Rich, your county legal counsel, has told you, it is not legal to apply these rules only to one person. You keep saying you don't, but you do. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Roberts.
Those rules actually apply to me too, and I'm not complaining.
Name?
We need
Mr.
Bowers,
Thank you.
Grants Pass, Oregon. Anyway, so I don't feel the same amount of paranoia that Dale does. It would be nice if we would actually contribute something instead of standing up every week and battling. That's only an opinion. Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
Okay, I'd just like to set the record straight on a couple of things here. One of them had to do with a statement Mr. Matthews said about not being able to talk about someone that's in the room. At the time I made that statement, it's because he was making slanderous statements about a former county employee and a former elected official, which is not appropriate. You can talk about people in a positive manner, or you can state something that occurred, but to make slanderous statements is not appropriate.